बिल्डिंग के बगल में इंडस्ट्री वाले इंडस्ट्री वाले बिल्डिंग के प्रोडक्ट
गुड आफ्टरनून राहुल सर।
गुड आफ्टरनून अरुण जी।
कैसे हो सर?
बस सर बड़े अरसे बाद आपके, ऐसा तो नहीं कहूंगा दर्शन नहीं हुए, क्योंकि आईवीएस सेशन में मैं रोज ही आपको मतलब एवरी फ्राइडे तो देख ही रहा हूँ, मगर हाँ बात करने का मौका आज मिला। आज राहुल जी नहीं है ना, तो आज मंच हमें सौंप दिया गया है, तो आज हम आपसे मुखातिब होंगे।
बिल्कुल, बहुत अच्छा लगा आपसे बात करके।
आप बताइए कैसे हैं सर?
बस ठीक हूँ सर, बहुत बढ़िया।
कैसा लगा नया, मतलब ये नहीं कह सकते कि वैल्यूएशन आपके लिए नया है, मगर रजिस्टर्ड वैल्यू पर एक नया खिताब जो आपके लंबे चौड़े प्रोफाइल में जुड़ा है, उससे कैसा लगा?
बहुत एलिवेटेड लग रहा है सर, एलिवेटेड फील कर रहा हूँ।
हमारे साथ ही आईवीएस में जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। हमारे और भी बहुत सारे मेंबर्स हैं, और यहाँ तो मतलब ये कहें कि आपके साथ तो बातचीत बड़े लंबे वक्त से चली आ रही है, बाकी किसी से थोड़ी कम, किसी से थोड़ी ज्यादा, कुछ ना कुछ तो सबसे ही मुलाकात हुई है।
राइट।
अरुण जी, वैसे कहाँ के रहने वाले हैं आप?
कौन?
अरुण जी कहाँ से रहने वाले हैं वैसे आप?
मैं अभी नागपुर में हूँ, लेकिन आई एम इन मुंबई, आई एम प्लेस्ड इन मुंबई।
अच्छा, अभी मुंबई में है।
मैं नागपुर से ज्वाइन कर रहा हूँ।
ज्यादातर लोगों ने मुंबई देखा होगा, मगर मैं उन चुनिंदा लोगों में से हूँ जिन्होंने महाराष्ट्र में सिर्फ और सिर्फ नागपुर ही देखा।
नागपुर अगर देखा है तो बहुत बढ़िया। नागपुर आल्सो
नागपुर देखा है।
आई हैव माय प्लेस ओवर हियर।
नहीं, नागपुर देखा है मुझे। थोड़ा टाइम मतलब मेरा जब प्रोफाइल आरवीओ से रिलेटेड नहीं था, उससे पहले थोड़ा सा टाइम मेरा आर&डी में गुजरा था, रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट में। तो आपके एम्स नागपुर एक बार देखने को मिला था, वहाँ एक प्रोजेक्ट हम मेरी कंपनी ने उस दौरान ऑफर किया था, तो उस सिलसिले में नागपुर आया था। खूबसूरत शांत शहर है आपका, अब उसमें
बहुत अच्छा
तारीफ
शहर है
नहीं,
सर,
कोई
बहुत
बुराई
अच्छा।
नहीं, पर यह है कि दिल्ली वाले जिन्हें मतलब अ, बगल वाले की सांसों की भी आवाज अगर आपको मेट्रो में आती है, तो वहीं नागपुर आपका बिल्कुल शांत शहर है।
सर एकदम दिल है वो, इंडिया का दिल है, हार्ट ऑफ द इंडिया।
जी जी। मैं एक शहर की तारीफ इससे ज्यादा नहीं करूंगा, क्योंकि बाकी सब लोग अलग अलग शहर से हैं, वो कहेंगे हाँ मैं जंगल में रहता हूँ।
संदीप है ना सर आज स्पीकर?
हाँ जी,
स्पीकर
आज संदीप जी का सेशन है, बस उन्हीं का इंतजार।
इज डूइंग वेल। हाँ,
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
चलो अच्छा लगा सुन। थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू, ऑलवेज वेलकम सर, बस आपके साथ ही बने हुए। एंड बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया हमारे बाकी सभी मेंबर्स का भी ज्वाइन करने के लिए। बस 5 से 6 मिनट आपको और इंतजार करवाएंगे सर, 3 o'clock एग्जिट स्टार्ट करेंगे।
Good afternoon, Sandeep ji.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sandeep sir.
Sundarajan from Pondicherry.
Yeah.
How are you, ji?
I am
Good
fantastic.
afternoon, Sandeep sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
बस आपके सभी मेंबर्स को आप ही का इंतजार था। राइट 3 o'clock स्टार्ट करें सर?
हाँ, exactly at 2 o'clock we'll start.
हाँ जी, 3 o'clock भी स्टार्ट करते हैं। बाकी शुरुआत तो हमेशा आपके इंट्रोडक्शन से होती है, मगर अब मैं कहूँ कि संदीप जी का इंट्रोडक्शन देना होगा, तो वो तो महज मुझे लगता है वैल्यूएशन फील्ड में अब एक फॉर्मेलिटी जैसा रह गया है कि अब जो लोग आरबी बने हैं, या खासकर जो लोग वेस्ट बंगाल से बिलोंग करते हैं, अगर वो संदीप जी देव जी को नहीं जानते तो आने वाले दिनों में जान जाएंगे, और अगर पुराने एक्सपीरियंस होल्डर हैं फिर भी संदीप देव जी को नहीं जानते, तो शायद वो गलत फील्ड में आ गए हैं, उन्हें जान लेना।
लेकिन ये बात कौन कर रहा है, मेरे को पता नहीं चल रहा है। Who is the person?
Sir, I'm the right player, the name by the name of the Rahul Sethi, because host में as a camera मेरा अभी off है।
अच्छा, ठीक है। जस्ट मिनट, मैं चेक कर लेता हूँ प्रेजेंटेशन ठीक से जा रहा है कि नहीं। ठीक है।
हाँ जी, ऐसी बातें मैं ही करता हूँ सर, राहुल शर्मा जी ऐसी बातें नहीं करते। अभी दिख रहा हूँ आपको।
Let me check the presentation. So is that presentation clear and visible?
राइट सर,
Hmm?
आप एक बार मूव करके देख सकते हैं।
Wait a minute.
हाँ जी,
Moving?
बिल्कुल सर।
Okay, thank you. Fine.
ये जिसका भी माइक चल रहा है वो ऑफ कर दो, वॉल्यूम कम कर दो। मैं तुम्हें होस्ट गुड आफ्टरनून एवरीवन। Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome
Good
you
afternoon.
all in the today's. Good afternoon, Arunji. I welcome you all in today's fourth online webinar session on IVS 102, Basis of Value. The session will be taken by our very one director, RV of AaRVF, Shri Sandeep Kumar Dev. Shri Sandeep Kumar Dev is having more than 20 years of experience in the valuation. He is a category valuer in many banks. He is known as the face of banking valuation among valuation community. Sir is also a vice chairman of the Tangible Assets Board in IVSC. Welcome, sir. And now I will hand over the session to Sandeep, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sandeep, sir, I think your mic is mute.
Yeah. Thank you, Rahul.
And thank you so
welcome
much. And
everybody to the
it's my
program.
request to everyone once again, please make your mute, please make your mic mute. So ताकि कोई डिस्टरबेंस हमें सेशन में ना रहे, बिकॉज आपका माइक ऑन रहेगा, आपके पीछे की आवाजें हमें सुनाई देंगी, आप हरगिज नहीं चाहेंगे कि आपकी घर की बातें हम सुने, तो प्लीज अपना माइक ऑफ रखें। थैंक यू सो मच।
Thank you very much.
Thank
Well, I believe that you have enjoyed the last week's session on the basis of value. Actually, I also wanted to take part there because I wanted to show some slides, giving you an examples on, there's a basis of value, how to use. But unfortunately, because of my little bit of downhill, as well as I was traveling that time, so I could not take part. However, we have put the basis of value considering its importance in valuation writing, because already you know that Ben has told you that this basis of value is actually, it is the base of the valuation. Now you know that construction of a building absolutely depends on the foundation, which is its base. Similarly, in IVS compliant valuation report writing and doing everything as per the international valuation standard, first of all, you need to understand the basis of value, and then only you can prepare your valuation report. You can complete your inspection. You can complete all your assumptions, limitations, calculations. Everything depends on the base of value. If your base of value is not correct, then your valuation report ultimately cannot give you a IVS compliant result. So therefore, it's very much necessary. So today I'm going to tell you, rather I should say that we will investigate, together we will discuss how the basis of value will be important, and how we will use it in the Indian perspective. That's the most important part of this training program, that whatever is written in the international valuation standard, how we can implement in our Indian soil, how the Indian valuers and the valuers from this subcontinent can use properly the international valuation standard 2025, which will be effective from 31st January 2025. We have very few days left, and we want to keep our members updated. We want that the participants who are taking part in this valuation training program would prepare themselves in such a way that immediately after, they will start delivering the valuation report in compliance with the international valuation standard. So let us start the presentation. I would like to make a presentation, and along with that, you please keep your pencil ready, so that whatever will come to your mind, you write down in the pencil in a piece of paper, and immediately you can uh, in your place, or you can keep it with you and can raise your hand at the end of the session. When it will be open for discussion, you can ask your question, unmuting yourself, making your video visible. You can ask your question by yourself, or you can post it, so that I can answer, and I would rather try to answer for everybody. So let's share the presentation. So this is IVS 101. That is International Valuation Standard 101. Now, in the basis of value, this chapter was also there, rather it is still there in the 2022 version of the International Valuation Standard. Some changes have been made, but these changes, let me first discuss the changes that has been there, so that those who are practicing their valuation in compliance with the International Valuation Standard 2022, they can easily catch up what are the changes that is coming to this 2025 regarding basis of value. First thing is that this chapter was previously known as IVS 104 basis of value. So IVSC has shifted 104 to 101. And now this has been moved and renamed as IVS 102 basis of value. To be IVS. Next is sections 30 to 80, 90, 120, 140 to 170 have been moved to appendices. Whatever is there under in 2022 edition, section 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, section 120, section 140 to 170. These sections now in this edition will not be treated as section of the IVS 10, IVS 102. But these sections are shifted to in the appendix part. That this appendix is a new addition to the International Valuation Standard. Next part is section 130, 180, 190, 210 and 220 have been moved to the section 10, 30, 40, 70 and 80 respectively. So which was previously in IVS 104, 130, it becomes in this edition, it becomes 10, 180 becomes section 30, 190 becomes section 40, and 210 becomes section 70, and 220 becomes section 80. 2 points you have to remember regarding quoting IVS, that under IVS, all these 10, 20, 30, 40, these are known as sections, right? And so because whenever you are giving reference to International Valuation Standard in your report, you have to mention that as per section 30, this has been given, right? So this is important technically to write a valuation report. Section 200, it was there in the previous edition of 2022. Now section 200 has been divided into two parts, section 50 and section 60. Section 200, what was there? It is there. It is assumptions and special assumptions. And this section 200 has been divided into two parts, section 50 assumptions and section 60 special assumptions. This is the very important part of basis of value, with which the basis of value IVS started. It says this section requires the valuer to select the appropriate basis or basis of value and follow all applicable requirements associated with that basis or basis of value, whether those requirements are included as part of the standard for IVS defined basis of value or not for non-IVS defined basis of value. So keep it in mind, whatever is there as IVS defined basis of value, the weightage of the IVS non-defined basis of value is also the same. So if you are to use an IVS non-defined, a non-IVS defined base of value, do not afraid, your valuation report will be in compliance with IVS. Now, when you can use a non-IVS defined basis of value? When the specific regulation or statute under which you are taking care of the valuation, you are doing your valuation, that requires a specific non-IVS defined basis of value. In that case only, you can use a non-IVS defined base of value. Let me give you one example. Then it will be a little clear to you. You know, we will go later on at almost at the end of the IVS 102 appendix. It is given one of the defined basis of value is fair value. Now fair value is defined in two different statutes in India and standard. One is in Indian Accounting Standard IAS, which a valuer has to follow when the valuer has to prepare a report under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code or under Companies Act. In that case, the value in case of Companies Act, when it is for the purpose of financial reporting, for the purpose of financial reporting, the valuer has to follow Indian Accounting Standard. And here and there, the definition of fair value is something different.
Hello.
When that valuer
Now
is,
to 98 998601.
Rahul, please unmute these gentlemen. And please mute these gentlemen.
Sure, sir.
And same thing, when the valuer has to do a valuation as per the IBC, then you see the definition of fair value is different, right? But your base would be, in that case, the valuer has to determine what would be its base. And if that fair value is the base of value, then the valuer has to define that this is the base of value as per the IBC or international or your Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code under section such and such, and then you have to do the valuation. You have to derive your valuation from that, right? Now, if you were to do as per the IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standard, you are doing the valuation by the order of an international investor, and they want that your valuation report should be done as per IFRS. In that case, the definition of fair value would not be an IVS defined base of value. It will be a non-IVS defined base of value. Although the non-IVS defined base of value, fair value as per IFRS is provided in this international valuation standard, but there also it is specifically written that it is a non-IVS defined value. But here you see what it says, whether those requirements are included as part of the standard for IVS defined basis value or not. So valuer, this part by which before introduction, IVS has given this thing, which is in a nutshell, valuer, it will give valuer a total idea how to use the base of value. First of all, this section starts with introduction, which is the section 10. Section 10.01, basis of value describes the fundamental premises or requirements. So what is premises? That's an important one, because in those who are there in doing the land and building valuation, they are quite conversant with the word premises. But the word is used in the building bylaw of the municipal area as a holding number. But that is not true here. It is the requirement actually. The fundamental premises means the fundamental requirements. That is, I should say that this is the foundation of the base of value. Base of the base of value is the premise of the value. Because the valuer first, the valuer has to identify which premise of value he will apply. On the basis of that, afterwards, the base of value. We'll come back to there, that what are the premise of value, how to use. It says that basis of value describes the fundamental premises or requirements on which the reported values will be based. It is critical that the basis or basis of value be appropriate to the terms and intended use of the valuation. Let me give a small example. Appropriate to the terms and intended use means terms comes from what? Terms comes from contract and intended use. Now, if your contract says that the valuer has to estimate the market value of the property. So the term itself, it is from the term itself, it is clear that the base of the value in this case would be market value. Where intended use? The intended use, if it says that the client wants to know the value, value for the purpose of capital gain, for the purpose of income tax. So in that case, it denotes to the Income Tax Act, wherein what should be the base? The base should be fair market value. Now this fair market value is not defined in IVS, neither as a IVS defined value nor as a IVS non-defined value. But IVS very clear about that the non-defined value list is a non-exhaustive list. So there may be a number of bases where a specific statute wants that. In this intended use of valuation, the specific statute under which you are to value is what? Is financial reporting or tax reporting. That may be. If it is tax reporting, in this case it is tax reporting. So how? So it is indicating Income Tax Act. If that is so, then income tax wants to know what shall be the fair value, fair market value. So therefore, in this case, in case of tax reporting for income tax purpose, for capital gain tax purpose, the base of value would be fair market value. Since a basis of value may influence or dictate the valuer selection of methods, inputs, and assumptions, and the ultimate value. So you see, your choosing your base will dictate the future terms by which your entire report preparation, your entire valuation methodologies, your entire collection of inputs, your entire assumptions, special assumptions, whatever may be, and limitations, all will finally depend on your basis of value. 10.02. There are different bases of value used in valuation, quite clear. The valuer may be required to use bases of value that are defined by statute. See, valuer, it is clearly, the instruction is given here as per 10.02. The valuer may be required to use bases of value that are defined by statute, regulation, private contract, or another framework. Even then, so 10.02, by mentioning 10.02, IVSC has given clear instruction that if the valuer does not adhere to the defined or non-defined values, non-defined basis of value, what are there in IVS 102/2025, even then that valuation report may be IVS compliant if the basis of value that are defined by the specific statute, regulation, private contract, or another framework. Even then, your report would be IVS compliant. 10.03. So 10.02 is very, very important because it has given a free hand to valuer. But one thing you have to keep as a valuer, that IVS always wants a transparency in valuation. Whenever you use a valuation base which is different from IVS, you have to define that base and you have to give the reference that this is why we are using this base of value. Come to 10.03, a premise of value. Wonderful. Now we are coming to premise. A premise of value or assumed use describes the circumstances of how an asset and or liability is used. Different bases of value may require a particular premise of value or allow the consideration of multiple premises of value. The most common premises of value used in IVS are highest and best use, current use or existing use, orderly liquidation, and forced sale. These are the four premises of use what are used for doing the valuation work, for writing the valuation report as per the IVS 2025, and we will discuss in a little bit elaborately, although the time is very short. 2 hours is actually a very short time. That is why actually I wanted to take 2 classes. Ben is for 1 hour, and next 1 hour I was supposed to take, but unfortunately I lost that chance. Even then I tried to finish it up by today. So 4 premises of value are there: highest and best use, current use or existing use, orderly liquidation, and for sale. 10.04, the valuation date will influence what information and data the valuer considers in a valuation. The valuer should be aware that most bases of value prohibit the consideration of information or market sentiment that would not be known or knowable with reasonable due diligence on the measurement or valuation date by participant. So 10.04 is also a very important section because it provides you the knowledge about valuation date. Why valuation date is so important? You see, because we know from the date we used to start our valuation study, our valuation education. We know that we have been told that value depends on basically 2 factors. One, value varies from purpose to purpose and from date to date. So date has an enormous influence on value. And IVS also has given huge importance of valuation date by telling that the date will influence what information and data the valuer considers in a valuation. Because when a valuer is using a data, when a valuer is using the valuation date is 2001, 1st April 2001. Then this will dictate the valuer what type of data, on which date or which year will be useful for him. You cannot use the data of 2024 to value a property on 2001 by back calculation. Not possible, because I have seen a number of cases of valuers who they have got in their mind that CII, that is a cost inflation index, can be used in a backward direction. So if I got a data in 2024, I can come back to 2001 1st April. No, absolutely not acceptable. There are a number of judgments of different Supreme Courts and different High Courts and Supreme Court and Income Tax Tribunal that in no way cost inflation index can be used in backward direction. It shall be used in forward direction. So if you want to, and the CII used to calculate the the A minus B difference. That is the the index value. So use of index in case of capital index, capital gain calculation or calculation of value is not acceptable, is not desirable also. But as the date of valuation is 1st April 2001, so it will dictate your terms that where on which date, which year you have to collect the data for that. 10.05, most bases of value reflect assumptions that may include but not be limited to one or more of the following characteristics, such as hypothetical buyer or seller, known or specific parties, members of an identified or described group of potential parties, whether the parties are subject to particular conditions or motivations at the assumed date, and or an assumed knowledge level. So you see, by 10.05, the valuers have been given a caution that how bases are related with assumptions. right? Next, we are coming to the next chapter, which says the basis of value. That was the introduction, 10, and 20 is basis of value. So what is 20.1? 20.01 says that IVS defined basis of value are listed in para 20.02. What are the IVS defined basis of value? Other non-IVS defined basis of value are prescribed by individual jurisdictional law, local regulators, applicable standards, or those recognized and adopted by international agreement. One thing, keep it in mind. Whatever base of value you will choose, whatever base of value or the valuer will choose, the valuer has to give the definition of the base. Otherwise, the base will not be acceptable. So therefore, be critical on that, be confident on that, that whatever base you will mention in your report, you must have the definition ready with you. Because from that definition itself, you have to come to the conclusion. 10.02, what are the different bases of value? IVS defined basis of value, market rent, equitable value, investment value or what, synergistic value, and liquidation value. I am not going into the details because details are there in appendix. Other bases of value may be required for, see, financial reporting. I say if it is financial reporting, then your base you are to identify under what accounting standard you are doing the valuation. If you are doing the valuation under Indian accounting standard, IAS, then you are to take the base of value from IAS defined value. And this fair value definition in the financial reportings will come from Indian accounting standard defined fair value. When it is tax reporting, I have given already an example. When you are doing your valuation report for the purpose of capital gain tax, for the purpose of income tax, then that fair value definition will come. That fair market value will be the base, and this fair market value definition will come from income tax only. Or in other legal or regulatory contexts, like sometimes you have to, if you have to value your valuation report under municipal law, then the base might be different. They might ask for some different base of value. In that case, that will do, right? Depending on the promulgator of the basis of value, the same words may be defined differently, right? Fair value is defined in IBC in a different manner, fair market value is defined in a different manner, and fair value is defined and as per the international financial reporting standard is different, as per the international accounting standard is different, Indian accounting standard is different, or require different valuation approaches. I would request everybody kindly mute yourself. Otherwise, you will disturb yourself, myself, and all your friends. Please mute yourself. Therefore, care should be taken to identify, articulate, and apply the appropriate basis of value for a given valuation. A non-exhaustive illustrative list of other bases of value is included at IVS 102 basis of value appendix A70 to A80. 20.04, these are all comes under 20 basis of value. In accordance with IVS 101 scope of work, the basis of value must be appropriate for the intended use, and the source of the definition of any basis of value used must be cited or the basis explained. So you understand what I said? Just before I told you, you must give a definition, and IVS requirement is also that. As per 20.04, it is clear that the valuer should use
Hello.
the source of the
நான் ஃபோன் பண்ணிருந்தீங்க. சொல்லுங்க. சொல்லுங்க.
Sir, it is very disturbing. Please don't mind. The fluency is low. Please mute yourself.
Done, sir.
Mr. Sandeep can.
So, in accordance with IVS 101 scope of work, the basis of value must be appropriate for the intended use, and the source of the definition of any basis of value use must be cited or the basis explained. So, it is the duty of the valuer to give the definition in his or in her valuation report. 20.05, it is requirement. It is not that you may or may not. You have to do that. The valuer is responsible for understanding the regulation, case law, and other interpretive guidance related to all bases of value used. A valuer can never say that I do not understand the IBC regulation. That is why I have given here the market value, not the fair value, not acceptable. Even in IBC, market value could be the base. We don't know. 20.06, the basis of value illustrated in IVS 102 basis of value. Appendix A70 to A80 are defined by organizations other than IVSC, and the onus is on the valuer to ensure that they are using the relevant definition. So you see, IVSC is not taking the onus. If you are doing the valuation as per IBC, then it is your onus to define the fair value. It is your onus to define the liquidation value as per IBC. Don't try to put the definition of fair value from IVSC to calculate your valuation. The valuation, the liquidation value definition of IVS may be different from that of liquidation value given by IBC. And if there is a conflict between two definitions, if two definitions are same, no problem. Even then, you have to use in your report that we are using, or I am using, the base of value from the insolvency and bankruptcy code regulation number such and such, which defines the fair value as, then you have to give the definition, right? We are coming to 30 entity specific factors. What are those? These are also important. For most bases of value, the factors that are specific to a particular buyer or seller and not available to participants generally are excluded from the inputs used in a market-based valuation. So entity-specific valuation means it's not general. Entity-specific factors that may not be available to participants include but are not limited to. So these are the following factors are entity-specific, not general. Additional value or reduction in value derived from the creation of a portfolio of similar assets. Unique synergies between the assets and other assets owned by the entity. Legal rights or restrictions applicable only to the entity. Tax benefits or tax burdens unique to the entity. And an ability to exploit an asset that is unique to that entity. So all these points are fingering towards a value which we generally call a spatial value, right? Because the spatial values are entity specific. We generally, so these, although we can use market value, but entity specific case, defining a base as a market value will be a little bit difficult, I should say. If it is an investor specific, then it might be investment value. Now, this investment value is definitely an entity specific value. It may not be, generally, it may not be a market value because it will take care of the investor's attitude, investor's mentality, what the investor is looking out of this specific asset, because your client investor's attitude towards the asset might not be same as the attitude in which the general market is capturing the idea from the asset. So therefore, entity specific thing is specific and not general. Whether such factors, this is 30.2, are specific to the entity or would be available to other participants in the market generally is determined on a case-by-case basis. So you cannot generalize. What I'm telling, that entity-specific things are always specific. And now your IVS also stated that you have to determine it on case-to-case basis. You cannot generalize. For example, an asset may not normally be transacted as a standalone item, but as part of a group of assets. In that case, any synergies with related assets would transfer to participants along with the transfer of the group and therefore are not entity specific. Kind of asset. Let me try to give you an example. Suppose you are doing the valuation of land. You are a land and building value. And you are doing the valuation of land and building of an integrated steel plant, right? So don't you think that integrated steel plant, you are doing a land, you are doing the value of the different types of structures, and these are all related with the steel plant activity. If there is no steel plant activity, does your value stand? The answer is no. It is absolutely related to the steel plant activity. So it is related with other machinery and plants. When everything is there, then on the perspective of those things, you are doing the valuation, right? If the objective of the basis of value used in the valuation is to determine the value to a specific owner, such as investment value, just I came back from there, right? Such as investment value or what discussed in IVS 102 basis of value appendix A40 in entity specific factor should be reflected in the valuation of the asset or assets or liabilities. Situations in which the value to a specific owner may be required include but are not limited to the following example: supporting investment decisions and reviewing the performance of an asset. I'm giving you an example. You know that Nilachal Steel? Have you heard the name of Nilachal Steel? It was there in Kalinganagar. It was there in Kalinganagar, Odisha, and Nilachal Steel was an auction. Then who was the best purchaser? Who could give the best value for that Nilachal Steel? The Tata Steel company is about a mile away from the Nilachal Steel factory. So their investment value, the perspective of Tata Steel, has to be the best. And that happened. Finally, Tata Steel was the highest bidder and they acquired the Nilachal Steel. And the valuers who were going to value that Nilachal Steel, they have to do the valuation. If they are doing it for Tata Steel, then they have to take all the viewpoints of Tata Steel, the advantages of Tata Steel to do the investment value of that property. But if a valuer comes and do a general valuation, give them a market value. then it may not be the ideal value that the Tata Steel is looking for. Because that valuer, while doing the market value, has not considered the advantages that Tata Steel will be having for acquiring Neelachal Steel, the locational advantages, the geographical advantages, the other advantages, right? So there lies the entity specific matters that a valuer has to consider, and this comes straightway in the basis of value that you have to consider supporting investment decisions. Because at the beginning of international valuation standard, what we said, first object is the valuation has to be transparent. Why you are providing higher value? In there, the valuer has to give every reason, the point of view. Then only the valuation report can be a sustainable report to the user, and useful report. Making a valuation report which is of no use to your client is not a valuation. And at the same time, no use means that you should not take care of the client's interest going beyond your ethics, right? So everything has to come together. You cannot, prepare everything compartmentalized manner. Because you cannot say that, Sandeep ji, you told me that I have to take care of the client's interest, and that is why in the case of secured lending, I have put up the client interest in the highest level that the client, my client, the Bank of India has to disburse the loans. I have given this inflated value. Where why they are now telling that I am incorrect? I have taken client's interest? No, my dear. Client's interest cannot cross the barrier of ethics, cannot cross the barrier of the valuation principles. Within the four boundaries of the ethics and principle, you have to take care of your client's interest. Number 40, synergies. Synergies refer to the benefits associated with combining assets and liabilities. Again, synergy is also coming from that your 30. That is what we were discussing. Synergy is a different portfolio, then will come. When synergies are present, the value of a group of assets and the liabilities is greater than the sum of the values of the individual assets and liabilities on a standalone basis, right? An important thing, think about everything is related. Suppose, we all do liquidation valuation under IBC. Now, if we think, standalone basis, the very important one. In IBC, if you consider the buildings within a steel plant as a standalone basis, how much value you can provide them? Is there anybody to buy a building there from city to reside? There is a officers' quarter. There are wonderful bungalow as a guest house within that steel plant. Now, if you want to value these guest house on a standalone basis, will you get a purchaser for that? There is no activity of steel plant. Is anybody going to buy that guest house? The company might have spent, the cost might be about more than 2 crore. Who is going to pay for these 2 crore if there is no plant activity? So it might not be even 10 lakh, 20 lakh. So, but when synergy is there, when everything will be sold together, yes, it might fetch more than 2 crore. It might be 3 crore altogether. All entire property will be sold at 4,000 crore. Out of which that 2 crore might be, come out as a 2.53 crore also. But if it is sold in a standalone basis, no way. Synergies typically relate to a reduction in cost and or increase in revenue and or a reduction in risk. 40.2, whether synergy should be considered in evaluation depends on the basis of that, right? If we are doing it on investors as an investment value, yes, synergy has a very important role to play. For most bases of value, only those synergies available to other participants generally will be considered, right? 40.3, an assessment of whether synergies are available to other participants may be based on the amount of the synergies rather than a specific way to achieve that synergy, right? Next, we are coming to very important one. When the last two, actually, the last two sections that we discussed, that is section 40 and section 30. Generally, these two sections applicable to big properties. 50 assumptions is applicable to each and every property. 50.1, in addition to stating the basis of value, it is often necessary to make one or multiple assumptions to clarify either the state of the asset in the hypothetical exchange, or B, the circumstances under which the asset or the liability is assumed to be exchanged. 50.2 says such assumptions can have a significant impact on value. So, my dear friend, the Indian valuers a little bit skeptical in adopting IVS. I have heard, I have seen in many valuation meetings, in many valuation seminars, why we adopt international valuation standard. Our valuation is different. So we should not accept it. It will crush us. It is not at all beneficial. My dear friend, before adopting IVS, have you ever heard of assumptions, spatial assumptions and limitations? The answer is no. The great advantage that these assumptions and spatial assumptions are providing to Indian valuers is protection. IVS is very clear about it, that whatever the valuer will assume, spatially assume, will put it there, which are very, very important to the valuation report, will put first in the scope of work. Let the scope of work will go to your intended user. Let your client accept and you do the valuation. You are safe. But if these assumptions and spatial assumptions are not there in your report, you are totally unsafe and you are totally exposed to all kinds of difficulties in future. I'm giving you a small example which was happened, almost 20 years back, 30 years back in UK. Our valuers are very lucky, I should say. They are not sued. In Europe, in North America, in Australia, it is a very common practice that valuers every month they have to go to court. They have a legal team that those who have suffered by the valuation report, they sue against the valuer. It's not like that only bank, and they sue for millions. And one such sue, it's not by bank. Two valuers were sued together. That because of their wrong valuation, the company, their client suffered a huge loss. But at the time of giving judgment, both the valuers' figure are very close to each other. But at the time of judgment, the honorable court applied a huge penalty to one valuer, and other valuer was absolutely put that he is free. What is the difference? There is no difference almost in their both of their figures. Difference is that the judge said that the second valuer's report is transparent. It is only because of the transparency. The valuer explained everything, whatever he has assumed, he has given it in writing. And in spite of reading the assumptions, understanding the risk, the client proceeded and faced a huge loss. But in the first case, the first valuer did not show anything, did not write anything. These are my assumptions, this is the way I calculated. Nothing. And as a result of that, court decided that it is intentionally he tried to mislead. The valuer tried to mislead the investor. So the first valuer, he has been given a huge penalty and he has been penalized. So try to understand. Indian valuers are protected by international valuation standard by providing the scope of putting assumptions and special assumptions and limitations officially in your valuation report. Your client, Indian banks, can never stop you writing proper assumptions and limitations and special assumptions, because most of the banks, they have already specified that your valuation report should be in compliance with international valuation standards. So you are at liberty to put whatever you like. No, I'm coming to this point. You will see all your assumptions should be justified assumptions. And your client, if your client accepted your assumptions, but at the time of challenge, it is found that your assumptions are not justified assumptions, you cannot escape. So be careful that I have written that the building is prepared, in the toilet I have seen these gold, fixtures, and that is why I have put up the fee, the value so high, will not stand. Because whether the gold fixtures are at all necessary, these questions will be asked. And at the time of next time it is found there is no gold, normal fixtures are there, you have not taken any photograph properly, it is not. So these points will come. So it is not always protective that you have whatever you have given client without seeing it is accepted, so you are free. No, it is to be justified assumptions, justified special assumptions. But at the same time, client straightway cannot say that I don't know, whatever he has written, I am not competent to go through by assumptions. No, the client can never say that. Client has to check. If he has any problem in understanding the valuation report, he can make an email, official communication. We are not understanding, please explain. You have given that the evidence as 20,000 rupees per square feet, and you have not provided an evidence, you have not attached the copy. The client can ask you, what is the source? And it is your duty to show the source in your report itself at www.xyz.com. Property ID number such and such, dated such and such. Then only your assumptions, your evidence will be completed, otherwise not. 50.2, such assumptions can have a significant impact on value, right? 50.3, it states assumptions related to facts that are consistent with or could be consistent with those existing at the valuation date may be the result of a limitation on the extent of the investigations or inquiries undertaken by the valuer. Examples of such assumptions but are not limited to. And assumptions that an asset or could you please mute yourself?
Sandeep, can't you mute all?
No, I am not. I cannot mute all. Rahul, can you mute everybody?
I think admin can do it.
Rahul, please mute everybody, and then I will unmute myself.
Just give me a few minutes, sir.
It's very disturbing. You understand? The flow is stopped. I'm very sorry.
राजेश जी प्लीज अपना माइक ऑफ ही रखा कीजिएगा सर.
You mute everybody, and then I will unmute myself.
Everybody is mute sir. Only राजेश जी का माइक दो बार ऑन हुआ था. मैंने दोबारा म्यूट कर दिया.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the disturbance.
So it is visible now? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So assumptions related to facts that are consistent with or could be consistent with those existing at the valuation date may be the result of a limitation on the extent of the investigations or inquiries undertaken by the valuer. Examples of such assumptions include but are not limited to and assumptions that an asset or liability employed in a business is transferred as a complete operational activity.
एक पे ये वाला क्वेश्चन है इसको मतलब इसमें काम करना है क्योंकि इसमें पॉलिसी नंबर.
Sorry again sir, म्यूट कर दिया मैंने.
And assumptions that an asset or liability employed in a business are transferred without the business, either individually or as a group, and assumptions that an individually valued asset or liability is transferred together with other complementary assets or liabilities. So this is an assumptions. It may not be transferred. If the assumptions that the individually valued asset or liabilities is transferred together with other complementary asset or liability, where it could be applicable in case of liquidation sale. When you are assuming that this property is in that steel plant itself, let us give the same example that all the buildings are valued or will be transferred together with other complementary asset. Wonderful, that will fetch much better value, you know very well. And assumptions that a holding of shares, and it is supposed to be there, it is supposed to be transferred, everything. And assumptions that a holding of shares is transferred either as a block or individually. So these are all assumptions. But while providing the assumptions, you are giving a complete picture to the end users how you have valued it and considering what are the aspects you have valued the property. All significant assumptions must be reasonable. See, 50.04. Your responsibility, valuer's responsibility. All significant assumptions must be reasonable under the circumstances. You know that the machineries has been sold separately, or the machineries of the steel plant has already been sold out, or there is no machinery at all. You know, the dacoits or the thieves, they have already taken up the machinery from the, unprotected plant. and now the building and now the immovable properties are on auction. In that case, you cannot assume that it as a steel plant. So if you assume it as a steel plant part and you are valuing these, assuming these assumption does not have any base. This is not at all reasonable under that circumstances. So be careful on that. Ignorance would never been accepted as against a professional fault. You are taking money against your professional service. You cannot say that I do not know. You are supposed to know everything. When you are telling that my report is in compliance with international valuation standard, it means that you have read 50.04 and you understood each and every word of international valuation standards. And you have done your valuation report accordingly. Even then, if you made that mistake, I say it is a bona fide mistake on your end, it will not be accepted as a bona fide mistake. It will be accepted as a bona fide mistake. Intentionally to inflate the value, you have assumed that the entire property, movable properties will be sold as a part of a steel plant, wherein 5 months before entire machinery has been sold out, taken out, or taken out by the owner or taken out by somebody else. You have made physical inspection, even then you have considered it as a part of a steel plant, then you are gone. First thing is that it is not in compliance with international valuation standard. You have made a false representation. Be supported because it is to be supported by evidence and be relevant, having regard to the intended use for which the valuation is required in order to provide an IVS compliant valuation. So I believe that whatever assumptions you will make, be proper assumptions so that you can substantiate the assumptions in future by providing evidence. We are coming to spatial assumptions. What is the difference? Where the assumed facts differ from those existing at the valuation date, it is referred to as a spatial assumption. Spatial assumptions are often used to illustrate the effect of possible changes on the value of the asset. A very common spatial assumptions I'm telling you. Although I know that many of our valuers do not consider or do not write it as a spatial assumptions. What is that? Giving the example of lease renewal, right? The lease might be the lease document given to you shows that the lease is for 30 years. And the renewal clause says the lease is renewable twice with the consent from both lessee and lessor, right? That clause is there, renewable clause is there, that the lease is renewable with the consent from both lessee and lessors for another 30 years term twice. What the valuers used to do generally, they used to take the total lease period as 30 plus 30 plus 30 and calculate the lessee's interest accordingly. Is it correct? Because what it says, if both lessee and lessor agree to renew, after 30 years lessor may not agree. In that case, what happened? The lease will end there itself. And this time only 5 years is left. Your client wants, suppose you are doing this thing on behalf of a bank to which the lessee's interest is already mortgaged. then what to do? You have to specially assume. What is that? Still it is not renewed, may not be renewed. So what we have to specially assume? That the lease will be renewed with the consent of both lessor and lessee before the end of every lease period. That is the special assumptions here. It is not matching with the present situation. Present situation says the lease will end after 5 years. So you have to do the valuation of the lessee's interest considering the remaining period of lease as 5 years only. You can only do this valuation for 65 years by providing these spatial assumptions. And these spatial assumptions has to be accepted by your client bank. If they accept, yes, 65 years, we are accepting, although it is not as per the lease document deposited to us, then only this valuation report is correct. If you do the valuation without mentioning the special assumptions, your valuation report will be treated as inflated valuation. If any case, the lease will not be renewed after 30 years, anything, it may happen. In that case, you will be charged. You cannot escape. But if one valuer has written the special assumptions and do, you see, figure will be the same. Like, I have given you that example of that English court order. Both you and because it's a high value property, definitely two valuers has done the valuation report. One valuer has put in special assumptions. Other valuers has not given anything. He has straightway calculated on the basis of 65 years. At the end of the 30 years, the lease was not renewed. The lessee, gone. And bank, what the bank has now? Nothing in their hand. The second valuer will escape. But the first valuer, 100% will be charged. There lies the, I should not say trick, there lies the knowledge. And that is why you are attending these programs. That is why it is necessary for the valuer to understand how to use international valuation standard. I am using the word how to use. Valuers might have to ask like an advocate. You might be advocates who never try to understand the criminal. I mean, they are the devil's advocate also. Advocates can be advocate of the convicted party, accused party. They never think that he is convicted. They always think that yes, he is not a convict. He is only accused, not a convicted one. And here also the valuer's job is to do the valuation for its client with all its experience, with all his knowledge. Right? So it is very much essential for you to understand assumptions and special assumptions. Special assumptions are very tricky. If your special assumptions you cannot prove, you cannot justify, you are gone again. So be careful on that. Special assumptions are often used to illustrate the effect of possible changes on the value of an asset. They are designated. They are designated as special so as to highlight to a valuation user, highlight that the valuation is contingent upon a change in the current circumstances, or that it reflects a view that would not be taken by participants generally on the valuation date. I am giving you another example, which is very common. That the land is used as an industry. In the government document, the property, the land is still as agricultural land. The land is already mortgaged to bank. The industrialist, the owner of the industry, told you that we have applied for conversion, but the certificate is not yet received. In that case, it will be your special assumption that as on date, it is not correct. Even you don't know whether the application will come with a positive note or negative note. But application is there for transfer. The industry is running. So as a valuer, and it is already mortgaged to bank, three things are in your favor. If you refuse to do the valuation, it will not be a professional job. As a professional, you have a solution. What is that? Special assumptions is your solution. In special assumptions, you write the property, the owner, the property is used as an industry for the last 5 years. The property is already mortgaged to bank. The owner has already submitted application for conversion to industrial use. Considering all these three above, we have specially assumed that the property is an industrial land property. Fair enough. You are safe, you can do the valuation, and legally, in compliance with international valuation standard, you can do the valuation. But suppose you have not done this, and in the few days after, few months after, the property becomes NPA, you have gone. Simple. Because the bank will say that is why every after 3 years we are doing valuation. The previous valuer will also go depanel, and your fate will also be the same. But if you have written all these three, you are safe. You can straightway go to court. I have got 3 specific examples by which the valuers again get back their empanelment within 3 months. But you have to prepare for that. Your report should reflect your acumen, your knowledge, your expertise, and your experience. And that is why you are attending this course. That is why you are going to be different from others. Examples of such assumptions include, but are not limited to, an assumption that a property is freehold with vacant possession. When you can make this assumption? When your client asks to do that. That although you have seen that it is encroached, the property is still under leasehold, but after a few months, the negotiation is gone and the lessee is going to purchase the property. In that case, this assumption is okay. An assumption that a property is freehold with vacant possession. An assumption that a proposed building had actually been completed on the valuation date. An assumption that a specific contract was in existence on the valuation date, which had not actually been completed. And an assumption that a financial instrument is valued using a yield curve that is different from that which would be used by a participant. You see in the example, IVS quite clear that how the actual situation is different from what the valuer is writing in the special assumption. 60.2, all significant special assumptions must be reasonable under the circumstances, be supported by evidence, and be relevant having regard to the intended use for which the valuation is required in order to provide an IVS compliant valuation. So You must have understood my example. Must be reasonable. Why it is reasonable? Because it is already mortgaged with the client. So client already disbursed the loan. Supported by evidence. What is your evidence? That the industrialist already applied for conversion. And another evidence is what? As per the SBI versus Duncan Industries, the court judgment of the Kolkata High Court, that if an property is being used as an industrial property, in spite of it not being transferred from agriculture to industry, but there is no agricultural use of the property for the last 5 years, but consistent industrial use, then the property can be considered as an industrial property and the owner cannot take cover of the agricultural land character to come out of that your bank operation. And what is the intended use? It's mortgage. Already it is mortgaged to the bank. So all 3 points given in IVS 102 60.02 is covered, and you can write that special evidence, special assumptions. 70 transactions cost. It is defined in your, it is given in your 102 70.1. Most bases of value represent the estimated price of an asset without adjustment for the seller's cost of sale or the buyer's cost of purchase and any taxes payable by either party as a direct result of transaction. So transaction cost generally the basis of value we do not consider. 80, another important one is the allocation of value. When there are different types of interest, different types of properties, then comes the allocation of value. Allocation of value from 80.1 is the separate apportionment of value of an asset on an individual or component basis. Allocation of value in case of a machinery can be done for different parts, Allocation of value for a total asset can be done for land, for building, for machinery. 80.2 said, when apportioning value, the allocation method must be consistent with the overall valuation premise and the valuer must. So what are the valuation premises? Highest and best use, current use. So you have to check whether allocation of value should be for that only. If you make the allocation of value for land for highest and best use, and you have made the allocation of value for the machinery for current use, will not happen. When you do the allocation of value, you have to consider, take the same example of steel plant. You cannot allocate the value of land for its highest and best use. You have to allocate the land value for steel plant use only. Although it is very close, I have seen a property, an industry, glass factory, which is located absolutely adjacent to the new metro railway station. As an industry, it does not have its value. The value of land as a residential property is now 20 times than its current use. Then can you use, when it is an apportionment of value, can you allocate the land value? We are doing the valuation of the entire industry. Can you allocate the premise of value of land the basis is market value and the premise as the highest and best use for land. But for building it is industry or for current use or for machinery. No. When we are doing the entire property base is market value and the premise is current use, current or existing use, we have to do the valuation of the land as an industrial land only. Although the highest and best use is 20 times than that. Set out a clear description of the intended use of the allocation. Consider the facts and circumstances, such as the relevant characteristics of the items being apportioned. Adopt appropriate methodologies in the circumstances. So, by which the allocation of value is complete. So, will you be ready to go for the question and answer session up to this? And then if time permits, we will take up the appendix which contains the market value, the market trend, the synergistic value, premises of value. So what we'll do?
We can go for question.
Question, fine. But question I will give you here only. Now it is how much? 16:22. 8 minutes is for question and answer.
Let me start from my side.
Fine, please.
In the
Tell me
special
your
account-
name. Tell
My
me your
name is-
name and then question.
My name is B.R. Ramesh. I am from Chennai, sir.
Please.
My question is now this recent IVSC 2025. Now I am doing some valuation through some IRP. The report will be getting ready by end of this month. Whether to follow this IVSC 2025 or old version. Number one.
Tell me as per the IBC, what shall be your valuation date?
Valuation date is sometime July 2024.
So I believe that you attended the first training program on IVS 100. What
Yes, sir.
Kim has said?
I am not able to follow. Now I am clear with your presentation.
What
That is why-
Kim has said that generally the valuer is supposed to follow the latest IVS, right? So for your case, your latest IVS would be 2025, but at the same time, as because 22.2 is also available and you have done your inspection and your valuation date is also within the reach, that is only 4-5 months back. So it is preferable to use 2022 only while preparation of the valuation report. No, don't go for 2025.
And one more thing, sir.
But you are at liberty. You can do it with the 2025 also.
Okay. In the class 60.02, we are telling some special assumption that this land is mortgaged with Indian Bank. The land classified as agriculture land. I want to know if the agriculture land can be mortgaged and can be valued by the IPP engineers.
Why not? Agricultural land, if it is mortgage, registered mortgage, for the purpose of SARFAESI, SARFAESI is not applicable on agricultural land.
Okay.
But so it is up to you. If your client wants that you do the valuation, you do the valuation.
Okay.
Then
if
you
the-
don't have to consider anything else. You
Okay.
consider it as an agricultural land, do it. What
No,
problem?
as you said, for last year there is no agriculture in the field. Last 5 years, now it is a vacant land. Can we treat it as a dry land?
I have explained it very well, sir. I don't want to go to a specific case. You have to understand what I said. So next question, please, from any other else. No question. So can we go back again to presentation?
Yes, please.
Sugato Biswas has raised his hand. Mr. Biswas, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Sandeep ji, just want to have an Indian example of 70.01. The examples are excellent. We want to understand through that example, Indian example, 70.01. Thank you.
70.01. Let me check. Most bases of value represent the estimated price of an asset without adjustment for seller's cost of the sale or the buyer's cost of purchase. Simple. It is in our case, we do not consider the registration value and the 2% brokerage. Do we consider when we give the valuation of a property, say valuation of a land or valuation of a building, do we consider 2% brokerage addition with it? We don't consider.
No.
So that's it. Transaction cost generally we don't consider. Now when we consider in case of capital gain, you can consider at the time of purchase. It is given in the Income Tax Act that the 2% brokerage can be considered, the registration amount paid also can be considered. So in that case, transaction cost can be considered. Right?
Sir,
it is absolutely an Indian case.
So for example, when I am purchasing a property from auction from a development authority, say like Calcutta Municipal Corporation or maybe
You are not audible. You are not audible. So we'll discuss later on, right? So we are coming back to the last part of this presentation. So appendix, right? Now this appendix was not there in 2022. This time the Standard Review Board, SRB, they separated this appendix from the standard. They said that there is no need, let it be a separate one. But these appendix are also, all the appendices are also an inseparable part of the standard. When a valuer has to do a valuation, following the standard or compliance with standard means that the valuer has to compliance with all parts of the appendix. The basis of value appear in the appendix. The appendix must be followed when using the stated basis of value as applicable. First one, A10, market value. It has given the definition of market value. Market value is the estimated amount for which an asset or liability should exchange on the valuation date between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's length transaction after proper marketing and where the parties had each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. Actually, you see, the market value is a combination of so many things. All the points are to be fulfilled. Only then it will be treated as a market value. But unfortunately, in government documents, this market value is used like anything. Let's come to 10.2. The definition of market value must be applied in accordance with the following conceptual framework. Let us discuss one by one. The estimated amount, first one, refers to a price expressed in terms of money payable for the asset in an arm's length market transaction. Market value is the most probable price reasonably obtainable in the market on the valuation date, in keeping with the market value definition. It is the best price reasonably obtained by the seller and the most advantageous price reasonably obtainable by the buyer. These estimates specifically excludes an estimated price inflated or deflated by special terms or circumstances such as a typical financing, atypical financing, sale and leaseback arrangements, special considerations or concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale, or any element of value available only to a specific owner or a purchaser. First thing is that it is the estimated amount. Fine. It is not the amount. So the entire market value base is estimate. We are estimating the amount. Considering that willing buyer is there, willing seller is there, arm's length transaction, no polluted environment, that means all are clear and simplified transaction, no special value related, no special sentiment is there. This amount is absolutely the same for all participants participating in that market environment. Then it will be the estimated amount. Second part comes, an asset or liability should exchange. Refers to the fact that the value of an asset or liability is an estimated amount rather than a predetermined amount or actual sale price, right? So it is not the actual sale price. It is an estimated amount that would exchange afterwards. It is the price in a transaction that meets all the elements of the market value definition at the valuation date, and it should exchange. It should exchange. It is expected to be exchanged on the valuation date. Requires that the value is the time specific. This is a very important one, because nowadays globally, especially in Europe, a special terminology is coming which is called sustainable value, right, or prudential value. Because now the European bank, they want to give the mortgage lending on prudential value. So research work is on how to calculate prudential value. The Basel, they already proposed to include the prudential value in their Basel records and Basel document, but it is not yet been implemented. Germany, Hipzerd is working on that, and a committee was formed in the year 2019 under the chairmanship of a very famous valuer and professor of valuation. What is his name? Neil. Just forgetting his name. But he's the professor of University of Reading, and the committee has already presented their report about they said that not market value. Now on, let there be prudential value or sustainable value, the value which will sustain throughout the lending period. There shall not be, the value should not diminish during the entire lending period. But till now it is the market value, and it is not the It is not the, it is the value as on the date of valuation. There is no scope of future valuation date. This value calculation, the market value calculation, and it is on the date of valuation only. Between a willing buyer means that the buyer is without any provocation, without any coercion, the buyer is ready to purchase. Refers to one who is motivated but not compelled to buy. Motivated by market environment, but he is not compelled to buy, he is not coerced to buy. This buyer is neither an overeager nor determined to buy at any price. This buyer is also one who purchases in accordance with the realities of the current market and with the current market expectations, rather than in relation to an imaginary or hypothetical market that cannot be demonstrated or anticipated to exist. The assumed buyer would not pay a higher price than the market requires. The present owner is included among those who constitute the market, right? So this is a willing buyer, means I am going to a market. There are so many other properties. There are so many other things to buy. I want to buy this property. I am interested to buy, but not over interested to buy, that I have to buy this property. No, I am willing to buy. Yes, I will buy if the value is correct. It matches with me. I will buy it. And a willing seller is neither an overeager nor a forced seller, prepared to sell at any price, nor one prepared to hold out for a price not considered reasonable in the current market. That means the seller is ready to sell his property as on date, what the property is today. He is not, he is not keeping the property for another 6 months, hoping that the price would go up. He is not forced selling the property that I need immediate money. He is ready to sell the property if a proper buyer comes and gives him the proper price today. The willing seller is motivated to sell the asset at market terms for the best price attainable in the open market after proper marketing, whatever that price may be. See, the proper marketing, there we are coming. The factual circumstances of the actual owner are not a part of this consideration because the willing seller is a hypothetical owner. Fine. So one of the most important point to be fulfilled is a willing seller. But in all acquisition purposes, all acts, I have seen globally, all acts, there it is written that all acts of almost all the countries, they wanted to know the market value. Do you think there is a willing seller in case of a land acquisition? Do you think that the owner is willing to sell its property? That means the very important point of willing seller is not fulfilled in case of land acquisition. But even then, we have to calculate the market value of the land in case of land acquisition, and that also defined how to calculate the value of that land in land acquisition. So the market is a confined market. Then how that price is considered as a market value, and that report will be considered as an IVS compliant report. What is the trick? The trick is there that IVS said always the method, the approaches, the definition, what is there in a statute prevail over what is there in IVS. And if you do the valuation according to the statute, even then there is a direct conflict between IVS and the statute directed valuation. The statute directed valuation will be treated as IVS compliant. And that is why, even though the willing buyer is not there, willing seller is not there in case of land acquisition, the valuation report prepared as per land acquisition law is treated as an IVS compliant valuation report. In an arm's length transaction is an very important part, and in simple sentence language is one between parties who do not have a particular or special relationship. For example, parent and subsidiary companies, or landlord and tenant, and that may make the price level uncharacteristic of the market or inflated or deflated. The market value transaction is presumed to be between unrelated parties, each acting independently. I would like to, my son wants to mortgage one property which is owned by me to bank for his business purpose. And the son is a client of a very knowledgeable valuer. The valuer knows the bank's rule. That bank do not make any valuation of a property if the mortgage is going to take place within 6 months of sale or purchase. So the father sold the property to his son, not gift. Sold the property to his son 3 times than the market value. Son has paid him that money. Registered in the register office, and then the son went to the bank. This is the property. This is the property document. Give me loan. So loan has been given. And then after revaluation time, it came to a valuer. He checked the document and found that it is in between. It is in between, no, not in this case also. Then after some time, after 1 year or within 3 months, another one has gone to bank, and that person has given this sale document to the valuer as an evidence, because we used to tell the my client, yes, this is the market value as per my assessment. If you have any other document by which you can show that the properties have better value, we'll do that. So they have taken it. So the client has shown this valuation, this purchase deed to the valuer. Yes, within 3 months, this property is purchased. Property value is 3 times than the market value. Then how to do it? Then the valuer has found it is between the seller. The seller is the father and the purchaser is the son. So this is not an arm's length transaction. So these evidence cannot be considered as a market value evidence. So the bank's interest is protected by the intelligence and knowledge of the valuer. So this is an example of arm's length transaction. Arm's length transaction has to be in between non-related party. After proper marketing, again the question of for sale comes. Bank wants to know the market value within a specific time frame. How is it possible? NPA, when the properties becomes NPA, then the bank has to sell it within a specific time. And again, proper marketing. How many? Bank used to give the notification in how many newspaper? The marketing is never a proper marketing in case of a NPA sale by bank. So it cannot be a market value because it says that the asset has been exposed to the market in the most appropriate manner to effect its disposal at the best price, reasonably obtainable in accordance with the market value definition. The method of sale is deemed to be that most appropriate to obtain the best price in the market to which the seller has access. The length of exposure time is not a fixed period, but will vary according to the type of asset and market conditions. The only criteria is that there must have been sufficient time to allow the asset to be brought to the attention of an adequate number of market participants. The exposure period occurs prior to the valuation date, but it never happens in case of an NPA sale by the banks. But even then, in case of NPA, the Indian valuers has to assess the market value, where the parties had each acted knowledgeably, prudently. That means all the parties know what are the defects of the property, what are the advantages of the property. Not only a willing buyer or a willing seller. Again, I will give the example of that non-performing asset sale advertisement. I did not have the time, otherwise I should have shown you with example. You see the advertisement in the newspaper about the sale of these properties. It says as is where is basis. What does it mean? And 50% cases the bank is unable to show the property even to the willing buyers. They are unable to show the property, to give an access to the property. Even then, the valuation has to be called as a market value. 50% cases, valuers is not allowed to go inside the property. How to assess? How the parties will act knowledgeably? Prudence is assessed by referring to the state of the market at the valuation date, not with the benefit of hindsight of some later date. For example, it is not necessarily imprudent for a seller to sell assets in a market with falling prices at a price that is lower than previous market levels. In such cases, as is true for other exchanges in markets with changing prices, the prudent buyer or seller will act in accordance with the best market information available at the time and without compulsion. Establishes that each party is motivated to undertake the transaction, but neither is forced or unduly coerced to complete it. So that's all about your market value definition. All the points are covered. So 10.3, it says the concept of market value presumes a price negotiated in an open and competitive market where the participants are acting freely. The market for an asset could be an international market or a local market. The market could consist of numerous buyers and sellers, or could be one characterized by a limited number of market participants. The market in which the asset is presumed exposed for sale is the one in which the asset notionally being exchanged in normally exchange. Why this market value definition and all things are to be understood properly? Because those who are practicing or will practice in court or in asset dispute matter, in arbitration, it is very much essential for them to understand each and every word of market value. Those who will act as a valuation reviewer, the profession which will coming up very fast in Indian context also. You also have to understand each and every word of market value to earn money. If the market value definition is not properly complied with by the valuer in its definition, but he says that in his report, but he says that my report is in compliant with IVS, first you have to check whether it is compliant with the market value definition. Then point it out and the report will be rejected. So valuer does not mean that you have to make valuation only, value only. You might have to review the value, which are more productive, which can produce more money for you. 10.04, the market value of an asset will reflect its highest and best use. The highest and best use is the use of an asset that maximizes its potential and that is possible, legally permissible and financially feasible. The highest and best use may be for continuation of an asset's existing use or for some alternative use. This is determined by the use that a market participant would have in mind for the asset when formulating the price that would be willing to bid. Now I'm going a little faster. Time remains is 8 minutes only. I would like to go as soon as possible to the premise of value. Without compulsion, you understand that there nobody is forcing. Oh, now I'm going back. Let me go. Next valuation premise is market rent. The definition of market rent is very similar to that of market value. When the market rent would be the basis of value, when the valuer has to determine the market rent, or sometimes the valuer has to determine mean profit. You know what is mean profit? The loss suffered by the owner by illegal occupation of the tenant or lessee. That is called mean profit calculation. In that case, the valuer has to determine where the market rents of that property and how much loss has been suffered by the landlord because of not having the property in its occupation because of illegal occupancy of the lessee or the tenant. For that, the basis of valuation is generally market rent. Its definition is very similar to that of market value. It is the estimated amount for which an interest in real property should be leased on the valuation date between a willing lessor and a willing lessee on appropriate lease terms in an arm's length transaction after proper marketing and where the parties had each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. Examples are very, unique examples are there, but unfortunately, we did not have that time today in hand, so I'm skipping it. Market rent may be used as a basis of value when valuing a lease or an interest created by a lease. In such cases, it is necessary to consider the contract rent and where it is different, the market rent. The conceptual framework supporting the definition of market value shown above can be applied to assist in the interpretation of market rent also. Contract rent is the rent payable. Now, we have seen contract rent. What is that? Contract rent is the rent payable under the terms of an actual lease. What is an agreed rent between the lessor and the lessee, or the landlord and the tenant? In some circumstances, the market rent may have to be assessed based on terms of the existing lease. In calculating market rent, the valuer must consider the following. In regard to a market rent subject to lease, the terms and conditions is very important for lease deed. In regard to a market rent that is not subject to a lease, the assured terms and conditions are terms of a notional lease that would typically be agreed in a market for the type of property on the valuation date between market participants. Next one, market value, market rate. Third is the equitable value. Equitable value is the estimated price for the transfer of an asset or liability between identified, knowledgeable, and willing parties that reflects the respective interest of those parties. So equitable value is not a among general, everybody to everybody this value is applicable. No, equitable value is applicable to linked party, identified, knowledgeable, and willing parties. That between you and me, what shall be the equitable value of this property, considering all our interests. Equitable value requires the assessment of the price that is fair between two specific and identified parties, considering the respective advantage or disadvantages that each will gain from the transaction. In contrast, market value requires any advantages or disadvantages that would not be available to or incurred by market participants, generally to be disregarded. So in case of market value, advantage and disadvantages are general. Anybody and everybody could avail that advantage and disadvantage while estimating the value. In case of equitable value, it is attributed to the interested two parties only, not beyond them, which are an interesting one for one, not be an interesting one or advantageous one for the entire proposed buyer. Equitable value is a broader concept than market value. Why? Although in many cases, the price that is fair between two parties will equate to that obtainable in the market, there will be cases where the assessment of equitable value will involve taking into account matters that have to be disregarded in the assessment of market value, such as certain elements of synergistic value arising because of the combination of the interest. Examples of use of equitable value includes determination of a price that is equitable for a shareholding in a non-quoted business, where the holdings of two specific parties may mean that the price that is equitable between them is different from the price that might be obtainable in the market, and determination of a price that would be equitable between a lessor and a lessee for either the permanent transfer of the leased asset or the cancellation of the lease liability. Investment value or worth, we have already discussed a little bit about this. The definition says that the investment value is the value of an asset to a particular owner or prospective owner for individual investment or operational objective. Investment value is an entity-specific basis. We have already discussed what is an investment value and how it is. Synergistic value is a special value. Synergistic value is the result of a combination of two or more assets or interests where the combined value is more than the sum of the separate value. Synergistic value concept is generally applied in case of while we consider the value, what would be the value of a lease property or a tenant occupied property to the tenant or to the lessee or to the lessor or to the owner. If we separately consider the value of the lessee and the value of the lessor, if we add those, then these two values is always less than the synergistic value. If the synergies are only available to one specific buyer, then synergistic value will differ from market value, as the synergistic value will reflect particular attributes of an asset that are only of value to a specific purchaser. The added value above the aggregate of the respective interest is often referred to as marriage value in some jurisdictions. See, there is a tenant, right? Tenant is a statutory tenant, means you cannot evict the tenant under the Premises Tenancy Act. And the owner is fed up with the tenancy, so he wants to sold out the property. Who is going to purchase the property in the market? Property from with a statutory tenant. Nobody can evict him. Then who is the best buyer? The best buyer is the tenant himself. Then why tenant will buy this property? Tenant will buy this property because in that case he would become the owner and he can use the property for his many other different purposes. Now he is only can use the property for the purpose of occupancy, enjoying the property. So it is a win-win situation. And what is the value in the monetary term of this win-win situation can be calculated by this synergy, and this is called the synergistic value. Why it is the marriage value? It is the marriage between two interests, interest of the owner of the landlord and the interest of the lessee or the tenant. Liquidation value, I take pride to tell you that actually I have seen how the definition of liquidation value is used in Indian context in a very ill manner. By considering the definition of liquidation value, the properties in India have been sold for IBC purposes at a very, very, very low price. So I have pleaded to the tangible asset that the definition need to have a change. Why we are using the term piecemeal? Why? What is the base? What is the why this piecemeal basis selling has been introduced in the definition? Nobody could able to answer. And I said there is no question because fortunately I am a member of the tangible asset. I said that my economy has been affected by your definition, but unable to provide me the justification of piecemeal selling. Why piecemeal selling? Liquidation value, when a property is gone on liquidation, why the property will be sold on piecemeal basis? The entire property is being sold. If it is a plant, then all the buildings, machinery are sold together. Why you are considering that all the properties will be sold on piecemeal basis? No answer. So finally, the standard board has decided to change the definition, and now the change definition is in front of you. We have deleted the word piecemeal basis. Liquidation value is the amount that would be realized when an asset or group of assets are sold from a liquidation sale, with the seller being of a specific date. Liquidation value. So everything is gone. Only the concept of short marketing period remains. Compelled to sell as a specific date. So now you cannot consider, when it is a steel plant, you cannot consider that the machineries, it is a process plant. If you sell the machineries on piecemeal basis, nobody is going to give you any price. So the companies are being sold on 10%, 15% price, the actual price. But now you cannot, the valuers, the corrupt valuers, I should say, they cannot take the the coverage of that piecemeal basis definition. It is gone. You have to consider it as a total industry. There is no question of piecemeal basis. Yes, compelled to sell as a specific date, within a specific date. Then it will be orderly transactions with a typical marketing period, or a forced transaction with a shortened marketing period. Now, from 2025 January 31st, I believe, I do not know, people have many other tricks. The value, the liquidation value of the assets will go up. A valuer must disclose which premise of value he assumed in case of liquidation value also. Whether you are using highest and best use or using current use. If current use is there, you cannot sell the property in a so low price. Other basis of value, well, fair value, International Financial Reporting Standard, they have given a definition, and for other financial reporting purposes, fair value, legal or statutory, we know that in India itself, we have two types of, we have fair value definition from IBC. And many national, state, and local agencies use their fair value as the basis of value as defined by courts in prior cases. IVS defined premise of value. We are almost come to the fag end of our program. Time is over. First one is the highest and best use. Yes, the basic thing in highest and best use is that is the most frequently applied to non-financial assets. As many financial assets do not have alternate use, there may be circumstances where the highest and best use of financial assets needs to be considered, but generally highest and best use premise is used for non-financial asset. And this 90.3 is the most important thing. Use must be physically possible, financially feasible, legally allowed, and result in the highest value. So if you want to make a property, highest and best use as a 10-storied building, wherein the soil condition is not at all suitable to make a 10-storied building, so it is not physically possible. Although definitely financially feasible, definitely legally allowed because of the road width and everything. And if it is 10-story building, yes, it is financially possible. Financially non-feasible means physically you can build a 10-story building. But to make 10-story building, the cost of construction, which is there, and the land value, if you add all, then you can find that you cannot sell the flats in such a rate which is non-compatible to the market rate. So it is not financially feasible. Legally allowed or non-allowed means you want to make a 10-story building, your physical conditions allowed. If it is a 10-story building, number of flats, the project is financially feasible, but the width of the road will not allow to give you that 10-story building height. And the mandatory open space would not allow you to make such a tall building there. So it is not legally allowed. So to make highest and best use, the valuer is supposed to know the building rules very well. He's supposed to have the idea of an architect so that to make a highest and best use application premise, generally it is applied to a vacant land or a partially built property, and from there the valuer is to make a hypothetical building, then deduct all the cost, come back to the net profit, and out of which you can get the value of the land. It's a very important, it's a very useful one when you do the valuation in urban areas, especially in metropolitan cities, where you cannot get a comparable land sale. You get a number of comparable flat sale from which you can put up the market rate of your hypothetically built flats, but you cannot get a land rate. So even if it is a 2 katha land or 3 decimal land, in all urban and metropolitan areas, valuers supposed to use the highest and best premises for valuation of land. The highest and best use for an asset may be its current or existing use when it is being used optimally. The highest and best use of an asset valued on a standalone basis may be different from its highest and best use as part of a group assets. Absolutely. When its contribution to the overall value of the group must be considered. The determination of the highest and best use involves consideration of the following. Well, you can see it's not that much tough. Let's come to current use and existing use. Current use or existing use is the current way of an asset, liability, or group of assets and or liabilities used. The current use may be, but it not necessarily also be the highest and best use. See, in most of the cases, in case of valuation of industrial properties, the premises will be current or existing use, not the highest and best use. Orderly liquidation. Orderly liquidation, liquidation value of a group of assets that could be realized, orderly liquidation and forced sale. Generally these are used for valuation of when the base is liquidation value, we used to use the premise as either orderly liquidation or forced sale. You know very well what is forced sale. So that's all for today. And I believe that within this short time, I try to disseminate whatever experience, a little bit knowledge I have with this. So this is now open for question and answer. Although time is over, even then we will take some questions also. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep sir.
Sanjeev Agarwal, please unmute yourself and.
Sandeep, thank you for the good understanding on the IVS. I have this problem, like we are doing some valuations for the banks, and the banks are asking only to give the realizable value, not the market value. So is
Why
it
problem?
What?
Why problem?
Yeah. So I mean, they don't want to have a market value word in the report at all.
No. As a valuer, suppose you have to be a little bit bold, because you know very well that without calculation of market value, realizable value is not possible. So you have to calculate the market value in your valuation report calculation portion. From there, derive the realizable value, and in your certificate you provide only realizable value. What is the problem? Because without calculation of market value, the calculation of realizable value is not possible at all.
Yeah, they don't want to give the discounting for the realizable value in the report, so they want to hide it.
No, they want to hide it. They want to hide many things. Banker will ask you that don't show us any bad portion of the building. Show is only the fine portion. As a valuer, can you do that?
Not at all.
Then similarly, as per the valuation principles, I have to do it. It is not bankers who will dictate the term. What is not acceptable by IVS is not acceptable by valuation principle, is not acceptable by us. Simple as that. Please. Okay. Thank you. Akhil Prakash Nair, please unmute yourself and ask the question. Mr. Akhil Prakash Nair, unmute yourself and ask the question. Sorry, you are not.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes. So, good evening. Actually, I hope you are able to hear my voice, I guess.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the class was pretty interesting. I was able to understand the base of value in detail, actually. So yeah, thank you. So it was so informative. So I also wanted to know that is it possible to get a recording of this actually? So
recording will not be possible. The PowerPoint presentation will be shared with you.
Just the presentation. So actually, I was not able to attend the previous class. That's why.
Previous class is a different. Totally, the entire thing has been covered in this class. You have not missed anything from my end. Previous class was taken by Ben Elder. He has given the perspective of the entire thing on the basis of the international valuation. So yes, you have missed. Definitely, you have missed, because Ben is a giant in valuation. So you missed that class definitely. Any question?
How will we be able to get the PPTs actually, so that if I want
that question, you send a mail to the organizer, they will share. Right?
Okay, sir. Thank you for the class actually. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Sir, I just want one question.
Your name, please, first.
Myself, Arun Borse.
Yes, Arunji, please.
Sir, how these definitions are different from whatever included in 2022? All the definitions which are included in the appendix.
They are in appendix, almost everything is the same except liquidation.
I see. Yeah, because market
Almost.
value seems to be very same.
Same.
wording
Almost all the other bases of values are same except liquidation.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Sugata Mishra, your hand is
sir.
still up. Is it a legacy hand?
Oh yeah, no, not that.
So it's a legacy hand,
My
right?
questions that, sir. The very interesting session. There's a interesting discussions on assumptions and special assumptions. It's a very interesting, sir. Where by going through this IVS, this 2025, everywhere written is an inspection. Where in Indian context, our nationalized banks are asking for a selfie with their valuers and all these things. So, is that the physical, the word physical inspections and inspections are not there in this thing. So, physical aspects, the physical inspection is very important for assumption, special assumption. The valuer himself visits the site for valuation purpose. So, my question is that it is written everywhere the inspection, the physical word is absent. So, what is your take on this, sir, as an Indian context?
You see, everything has a good effect and a bad effect. After the incidence of COVID-19 pandemic, I believe that the entire world has understood that inspection also may not be possible. Therefore, IVS has given weightage on investigation. And they said that investigation is must, which includes inspection. Right? You are asking about physical inspection. IVS has not made it mandatory inspection also. They said that investigation is mandatory, not inspection, which includes inspection. Your second part is that, so inspection is not mandatory. If you are asked to do a desktop valuation, where comes the question of inspection? If you want to do the valuation of a high sea, pipeline valuation, how can you make the inspection? If you have to make, it's not possible. If you are to make a valuation of a, aircraft company, which have 300 of, aircraft, which are flying all through the continent, how can you make the inspection? And second part of view is the physical inspection. Physical inspection also, if you can provide, evidence that the property is inspected, it is immaterial who has inspected it. The way the banks wants to, do in India, they wants to make valuer liable for everything. If they want to make physical inspection by the valuer individually mandatory, then they should not give the empanelment of any partnership or LLP or company as a valuation, as their panel value. And they cannot give more than one job to one person in one day or 3 days, because it is practically impossible. Right? They are giving 10 jobs, 20 jobs, 30 jobs to a single individual persons, knowing fully well that it is not possible for him to go 30 places. So it is absolutely impractical, and they only want to bind the valuers in this type of trap, so that if there be any problem in future, they can trap the value. Second part is that as per law, you can send anybody as your agent, but the responsibility will lie on you. You are the principal. Whatever wrongdoings will be done by your agent, if your agent has made a mistake in identifying the property, it is the mistake of the valuer. So the mandate that bank are giving, which is given in their, the format, which is which is impractical, absolutely impractical, and bank cannot take any case charge against a valuer, which is absolutely impractical. It's not possible to go to everywhere by a valuer for inspection. But responsibility remains the same, whether it is inspected by the valuer himself or he has sent somebody as his agent, right? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So I believe there is no question. So I request Rahul, you can close the meeting and we can start preparation for the next week. Rahul, please.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep, sir. Thanks for thanks to everyone, member. Thanks to everyone also for joining this session. And we all will meet on the next Friday, same time, same place.
And I
Sir,
can tell you that Tom is a wonderful speaker. He is from RICS, and you are going to participate in a wonderful session in the coming Friday. First time he is going to talk in India. So I believe that all of you will join and will enjoy. And in the second part of the session, I will join you. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. அது ஒரு லைன் தெரியுதுல்ல? சரி.